Nice and early this morning, so hopefully it's quite warm in here, and hopefully we'll keep your interest rather than anybody dropping off to sleep. You won't be offended if you do. So, part of the reason we chose this slide was to get your attention immediately as well. It's one of the items from our collection as well, so you can ask us about that later, and why. I'm going to blame Norman for this, why Norman chose this particular slide. So, we're really pleased to be in Warsaw and presenting to you today and sharing those experiences about using digital strategies for engagements. And it's something we have thought a lot about at the University of Edinburgh. We're going to reflect in our presentation on the cultural shifts that we've experienced and changes in our working practices to be more user-focused. Like many organisations who've been around for a long time, we inherited systems, practices, spaces and obviously collections that were surrounded with archaic practices. One of the things that we experienced is that a lot of our collections management was based within the library service and have been for hundreds of years. And so the treatment of particular collections that perhaps needed a different discipline to look at it were catalogued and treated in a particular way. With growing teams in archives and museums, more thought was being given to where collections were complementary and how you could actually link up and connect those collections. So we were looking at new ways of working. We've obviously got a lot of students, as you see here, so we had to think not just about our students, but also the university's role within the community as well. A major physical investment in our building, so we had a shiny new search room and things like that for the archive and museum collections, meant that we had time to actually reflect on our practices as well. There'd been a culture shift which meant the convergence of teams, so there were curators, archivists, librarians, digital specialists, project managers, all working in the same team, not working in silos. The university management as well came up with a vision document. They wanted us to actually think about what we were doing, and I know many of those kind of documents you see out there in our sector pay lip service to what they want us to do as curators and archivists and librarians. But this document, the management really wanted us to react to it and to grow our services, our collections and our professional practice. This included working on some joint initiatives. We established some cross-cutting groups. And why did we do this? Well, in a culture where there's changing working practice, we wanted to bring people together to have those discussions, engender a culture of discussion and a practical approach to problem solving with our collections, how we describe them, how we engage people with those collections. And we wanted to create that environment for that. There were 4 particular groups that we established: digital asset management, resource description and discovery, academic, student and public engagement, and projects and fundraising. With that particular background of change, there was also a number of projects which shifted our use of technology, hence this repository review where we scribbled all our different systems, the way we approached them down, and people got quite creative with looking at what we had and what we had to connect up. So I'm going to pass you over to Norman to actually have a look at a number of projects that actually describe what in particular was instrumental. That's not a joke, you'll see why I said that in a minute. And hopefully you'll get an idea of what this actually meant.
Okay, I'm going to start my part with a small confession, and I guess this might apply to people in the room. It might be something to do with whether it's shoes or jewellery, cameras. For me, it's guitar shops. I can't walk past a guitar shop. This guitar shop is far too close to our work. It's like literally, I pass it on a daily basis. Normally keep my blinkers on, I walk past it. Unfortunately, one day a couple of years ago I didn't, and I went in and I saw this. Now this is a Yamaha SG 2000S. I already had a Yamaha SG, didn't really need another one, but I made the mistake of playing this one, and thought I have to find out about this guitar. It was lovely. So I asked, all that was on the guitar in terms of information was a small piece of cardboard with the fact, the name of the guitar, made in Japan, and the serial number. But with that information, I went back to the office in my lunch break, I guess, did some research and found out it was made in 1983, found out the exact place it was made, found out what it was made of, the whole technical specification of the guitar, and then went back to the shop and bought the guitar. And so my next problem was trying to explain to my wife why I spent £1,000 on a guitar I didn't really need. Anyway, the reason for talking about that is to illustrate the position we were in the university. We have 2 historical musical instrument collections in 2 museums. It's a world-class collection, but trying to find out information about musical instruments that are historic compared to relatively recent instruments is a completely different story. And 5 years ago, our website at the university was detailed, had lots of information, lots of technical specifications of instruments. You couldn't search it, you couldn't match the images to the technical spec, and what search facility there was relied entirely on a system called Hornboston Sachs, which was a classification system for musical instruments designed in 1914 and not updated since. So if you were an expert in the field, it was fine. Anybody else had no idea how this thing worked, and that kind of typified a lot of the situations we found at the university, because as Rachel said earlier, it was very academic-led, very sort of focused on their special interest. To them, that was fine because it was a kind of exclusive club, and they enjoyed their exclusive club. To the world outside, it didn't work. So we had to change that. We brought together, we found out the same situation happened in other museums around the world, especially musical instrument museums. So we ran a project called MIMO, which was Musical Instrument Museums Online. This ran from 2009 to 2011. And we developed the infrastructure to get all our content initially into Europeana, and then subsequently developed a new MIMO website. We started with a small partnership of 9 museums contributing to Europeana. We now have 25. And we've become a worldwide initiative, and the project has grown arms and legs, and it's still going. But the point of bringing this up was that this really was the catalyst for change within the university. We suddenly saw that we now had the infrastructure, we had the methodology, we had the will to open up things to a much wider audience than just an academic base. So earlier this year, we relaunched our whole University Collections website. This is collections.ed.at. I'll give you the URL at the end, I think. So we now have a lot of collections in there. With fine art, we have exhibitions, we have musical instruments. We're expanding it all the time. We're just about to put all our iconic collections in here. But the whole point of this was that it's accessible, it's user-friendly, and it has the scholarly content, which is critical for a university, but it doesn't dumb it down. We start off with simple descriptions, and then we pyramid down the way, so the further down you go, the more detail you get. So it satisfies the academic needs, but it also satisfies the general user, because we have a wide user base. We work with school kids, we work with the public, and the sites we had before just did not work for that wider audience. We had to change it. This is an example of one thing we've just recently addressed as well, is that we have a large image collection. This is an image which is in our image collection. It's in our image management system, which is called Luna. Lots of metadata down the side. I guess you probably can't read that. But this kind of typifies what we had before, which is that anybody who wanted to search for that image, we probably have to read this myself because I don't remember it either, but you would not probably search for this by typing in Mark Catesby, Natural History of Carolina Flora in Bahamas, published in whatever. You would search for turtle. Nowhere in that metadata is the word turtle. Because what happened with our systems was that the digital imaging unit would take a photograph of a book from an order, which would have the publisher, the author, the shelf mark, the date, etc. Nothing about the subject. So we had to completely rethink what we had in this data because it's no use. So we've currently just launched this. This is our very retro metadata game where we're inviting people to tag our images. It's very simple. People just go on and they can enter some detail. We've actually simplified it even in the last few days, so that even the persons, objects, places is gone. It's just a bar. You can type anything about the image that you like. And we've been running this with staff and with students as a test. And you get scores, and you win chocolate if you get the highest score. So it works, and we're gradually building up some metadata about the images that people can actually use, not just what academics want. At which point, we should pass you up to Rachel.
So from that, you can see it's quite the metadata that we gather is quite important for users. And I mentioned earlier that we had quite an archaic practices rooted in some of the traditional library methods. There's also a requirement for having that scholarly content, as Norman said, and so descriptions, of that, we need to describe professionally what we say, but we needed to tag things as well so that the wider user base could actually make sense of them. So in terms of archives and manuscript collections, which is my area, we looked at a new system for cataloguing, and within that converged environment I described, we chose a particular one which meant called archive space, which meant that we could be involved in the development, we could actually link our metadata between our different systems. So this is a screenshot of the system, so that we've got hierarchical cataloguing, but we can map that to the library management, the museum management system, and we get that professional practice in all our areas, but it's now connected. To illustrate that further, and Norman showed you images from our collection, we also can embed images and film. So I'm just going to show you a little bit of this film, which is from Edinburgh College of Art's archive collection from the 1930s and 40s. It's the student parties that they had at the Christmas period. So with that catalogue entry that you just saw, we're able to actually connect that actual item. So when people search on collections.ed in the future, they'll be able to go immediately to items like this to see the digital content straight away. So we've got that balance between the two. So to conclude, we've experienced that cultural shift and the way we manage, share and connect our collections, our spaces, our people and the skills that they have, so that we can communicate our collections to a wider, more diverse audience, and to communicate them in a wider, more diverse way. It was building on the skills that were already there, but it allowed us to reinvigorate our thoughts, our practice, and have that positive challenging of traditional professional norms, and that's quite important. That it's quite easy to get stuck in that, I'm doing my curatorial job or I'm doing my archive job, and not think about the wider practice. With one particular project that Norman maybe mentioned before, St. Cecilia's Musical Museum, we're redeveloping that and applying those same principles, addressing the needs of physical users to a musical instrument museum where you can't just look at those items, you need to hear them as well. So hopefully we'll be able to take those things that we've mentioned, that we've experienced, and apply them between the digital and physical. So.
Thank you very much, Rachel and Norman. Can you please stand, because we have some time for one or two questions now, and then at the end of the session we will have more for more generic questions. But maybe if there's an immediate question at this point in time.
I must say this chocolate thing was just amazing. But what did you do with all the words or tags? Did someone review them?
Yeah,
right.
What we've done so far is that we assume that once we have 5 similar entries that can go into the system, so there's a filter that lets 5 through to the system, and then they're moderated from there. And we've also got a word stop on it, so we don't want penis coming up every 5 minutes. So we do moderate it.
And what about the statistics?
For use?
Yeah.
We just monitor through Google Analytics. I don't have any figures, unfortunately, but it's definitely, we do know that it's definitely improved the usage. Certainly, from a musical instrument point of view, it's radically transformed.
I had a related question on that, because it's interesting to see how you as an academic institution also want to address the general public. Can you say something about how do they much in terms of science? Is it
usage? I couldn't give you that information, but we do. It's part of our university policy that we have to address wider access. It's stipulated in our strategy that we have to open them up. So
yeah.
We do know that, for example, again with the musical instrument museums, we've got a greatly increased number of visits coming from school kids. That never happened 5 years ago. So it's there's daily visits that I would say are really more from school partners that we never.
I think we've also had to address that with Edinburgh College of Art, for example, merged into the university in 2011, and with that, in a different set of skills, the students, the staff have a more practical base. So where we have academic descriptions and the way they want to use the collections, the way they search, is completely different to someone who's an academic in history, for example, or in English. They actually want to use the collections for their art practice. So we actually had to shift how they use, how we think they use the collections. We had to do a little bit of analysis as to how we can make those collections available as well, because a traditional search room or traditional setting to access those collections just wasn't suitable. And that some of those things that we found also applied to the different groups that Norman mentioned, like schools. It's just not suitable to invite them into a very academic search room setting.
Final question? Okay, thank you, Rachel and Norman. That's a great start. Thank you very much.